Imagine this for a moment. You're walking along a quiet beach, feeling the cool sand under your feet, when something strange catches your eye. At first glance, it looks like a creature from a science fiction movie. Its shell is shaped like a helmet, its tail long and sharp, and it moves slowly, as if time itself doesn't matter. And guess what? For this animal, time really doesn't matter, because it has been alive on this planet for over 500 million years. Yes, 500 million years. That means it was here long before dinosaurs ever walked the earth, before the first trees appeared, and before most life even thought about leaving the ocean. This is the horseshoe crab, a creature so ancient it feels like nature's time capsule. Just think about that for a second. Humans have existed for about 300,000 years. Dinosaurs dominated for around 165 million years before they disappeared. But this creature? It has been around through all of it, unchanged, unshaken, and unbelievably resilient. That alone makes it one of the most fascinating survivors on Earth. Now, what's even more incredible is how little it has changed over all those millions of years. If you saw its ancestors from 400 or even 450 million years ago, they would look almost exactly like the ones crawling on beaches today. The same helmet-like shell, the same sharp tail, the same strange armored body. Scientists call this evolutionary stasis, which basically means if something works perfectly, there's no need to change it. And that's exactly what happened with the horseshoe crab. It found a design that worked, and it stuck with it for hundreds of millions of years. But let me paint a picture of what Earth looked like back when this creature first appeared. There were no birds in the sky, no flowers blooming in the fields. Even the continents were in completely different places. Life was mostly in the oceans, and among the first creatures to crawl through the shallow seas was this very animal. While countless species have come and gone, wiped out by massive extinctions, including the one that killed the dinosaurs, this little armored survivor made it through every single one. And you know what's even crazier? It did all that without ever looking like it was in a hurry. When you see a horseshoe crab today, you might think, this is a crab, right? But here's a fun fact. It's not actually a crab at all. In fact, it's more closely related to spiders and scorpions than to crabs or lobsters. So the name is a little misleading. That's like calling a dolphin a fish just because it lives in water. The truth is, horseshoe crabs belong to their own unique group, completely different from the crustaceans you see on your dinner plate. And that tail, it's not a weapon. It's actually a tool, helping the crab flip itself over if a wave knocks it on its back. Now, you might be wondering, how does an animal survive for 500 million years without going extinct? The answer lies in its design and its habits. Horseshoe crabs are like nature's tanks. Their tough shell protects them from predators. They live in shallow waters, feeding on small worms and clams, staying out of trouble. And most importantly, they are masters of reproduction. Every year, they come to shore in massive numbers to lay thousands of eggs in the sand. So even if some are eaten by birds or fish, plenty survive to keep the species going. Here's another mind-blowing detail. Their blood is not like ours. It's blue. Yes, blue blood, because it uses copper instead of iron to carry oxygen. And that blue blood isn't just interesting. It's incredibly important for humans. Scientists use it to test medical equipment for dangerous bacteria. That means, in a strange way, this ancient creature helps save lives every single day. We'll talk more about that in the next part of this series, but just imagine, a creature that has outlived dinosaurs is now helping us survive in the modern world. That's incredible. Think about all the things this animal has seen. It was here before the first forests grew on Earth. It survived the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. It has watched continents drift apart, oceans rise and fall, ice ages come and go, and through all that time, it just kept crawling along the ocean floor, doing what it has always done. No drama, no rush, just pure survival. Now here's the question that always gets me. If this creature has been around for so long, will it still be here 1,000,000 years from now, or even 100 years from now? The truth is, its future depends on us. Because despite surviving everything nature could throw at it, the horseshoe crab now faces something it has never faced before: us, humans. But that's a story for another time. So the next time you walk along a beach and see something strange and ancient crawling in the sand, remember this: you're not just looking at an animal, you're looking at a living piece of Earth's history, a survivor that has been here for 500 million years. And if that doesn't make you feel small and amazed at the same time, I don't know what will. If you want to know the unbelievable ways this creature is saving human lives, and why scientists consider it one of the most important animals on the planet, don't miss the next part. Trust me, you're going to be shocked. You remember how I told you about the horseshoe crab's blue blood? Let's dive deeper into that, because this is where things get absolutely wild. Imagine if I told you that right now, in hospitals all over the world, the survival of patients depends on the blood of this ancient creature. Sounds like science fiction, right? But it's real, and it's happening today. The horseshoe crab's blood isn't just blue for fun. It's blue because it contains copper instead of iron, which is what gives our blood its red color. But here's the real magic. That blue blood has a special superpower. It can detect dangerous bacteria in a way that no human technology can fully replicate. There's a substance in the crab's blood called limulus amebocyte lysate, or LAL for short. And this LAL is so sensitive that even the tiniest amount of bacterial contamination will make it react instantly. Why does that matter? Well, think about every medical device that enters your body. IV drips, surgical implants, vaccines, injectable medicines. Before any of those things can be approved for use, they have to be tested to make sure they're completely free of harmful bacteria. And guess what they use for that test? The LAL from horseshoe crab blood. Without it, modern medicine as we know it would be far less safe. This means every single time you've had an injection, every time a baby got a vaccine, every time someone received life-saving medicine, there's a good chance it was tested using this ancient creature's blood. Isn't that insane? A 500-million-year-old animal is literally saving human lives in the 21st century. When you think about that connection, something that crawled out of the ocean before trees existed, helping protect us from deadly infections today, it's almost poetic. Now, here's the part that's both fascinating and a little heartbreaking. To get that blood, companies collect hundreds of thousands of horseshoe crabs every year. They take the crabs to a lab, gently extract some of their blood, and then return most of them to the wild. But not all of them survive the process. It's estimated that somewhere between 10 to 30% die after bleeding. That might not sound like a big deal, but when you consider how important they are to the ecosystem and to us, it's a real problem. Think about the ripple effect. Horseshoe crabs lay their eggs on beaches, and those eggs are a critical food source for migratory birds, especially red knots, which travel thousands of miles every year and rely on those eggs to fuel their journey. If horseshoe crab numbers drop too low, it affects entire ecosystems, not just the crabs themselves. Scientists are working on synthetic alternatives to LAL, something that could replace the need for horseshoe crab blood altogether. And there has been some success. There's a synthetic version called RFC, recombinant factor C, But adoption is slow because the traditional method has been used for decades, and regulators are cautious. Until that changes, horseshoe crabs remain in high demand. Now let's talk about something you probably didn't expect. This ancient creature isn't just important to science. It's also part of human culture. In some countries, people have eaten horseshoe crab eggs for generations, treating them as a delicacy. In other places, the whole animal is used in traditional medicine, and in the fishing industry, horseshoe crabs are often used as bait to catch eels and whelks. This adds even more pressure on their populations. But despite all that, when you see one in the wild, it's not an aggressive animal. In fact, it's shy, slow-moving, and completely harmless to humans. That long, sharp-looking tail? It's not a weapon at all. It can't sting, it can't cut you. It's just a lever, like a built-in crowbar, so the crab can flip itself over if it gets stuck on its back. Nature is brilliant like that. Simple, efficient solutions for survival. And let's talk about its armor. That tough, curved shell is like a natural helmet, protecting its soft body underneath. If you've ever picked one up, and please, only do it gently, and if you're allowed, you'll notice how surprisingly light it is, despite looking like a tiny tank. And those little legs underneath? They're perfect for crawling along the ocean floor, sifting through sand for food. It eats small clams, worms, and bits of organic material. Nothing dramatic, just quiet, steady living. Here's something else that blows my mind. Horseshoe crabs don't mature quickly. They take about 9 to 12 years to reach adulthood. That means every time you see a full-grown horseshoe crab, you're looking at an animal that's been alive for at least a decade. It's another reason why overharvesting is dangerous. These creatures invest years into growing, and if too many are taken before they can reproduce, the population can crash fast. And yet, despite all these challenges, there's something comforting about them. They've survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions, things that wiped out almost everything else. If any creature can handle the future, it's this one. But the question remains, will humans give them the chance? Because the truth is, we depend on them more than they depend on us. Without their blood, modern medicine would be in serious trouble. Without their eggs, migratory birds could starve. And without their role in the ecosystem, the balance of life along our coasts could collapse. That's the hidden truth most people never think about when they see a strange, ancient creature crawling on the sand. So, the next time you hear the words horseshoe crab, I want you to remember this. You're not just thinking about some weird ocean bug. You're thinking about a species that's older than dinosaurs, a creature that has literally shaped the survival of life on Earth, including ours. And as we look toward the future, we need to ask ourselves, do we want to be the generation that ends a story that's been running for 500 million years? Or do we want to make sure this story continues? In the next part, I'm going to tell you something absolutely crazy about their life cycle, their epic migrations, and the nighttime beaches that look like scenes from another planet. It's a sight you'll never forget. If you've ever been on a beach at night, during late spring or early summer on the east coast of the United States, you might have walked past one of the most extraordinary events in nature without even realizing it. Picture this. The moon is full, the tide is high, and the shoreline is alive with thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of strange, armored creatures crawling out of the sea. It's the horseshoe crab spawning season, and it's like stepping into a time machine that takes you back hundreds of millions of years. Why do they come to shore like this? Well, this is their moment to ensure the survival of their species. After spending almost their entire lives on the ocean floor, these ancient creatures make this incredible migration to sandy beaches to lay their eggs, and they do it with perfect timing guided by the moon and tides, just as they have done for millions of years. Females, which are usually larger than the males, crawl up the sand carrying thousands of eggs inside them. Males, much smaller and often clinging to the back of a female, are ready to fertilize those eggs. When the female digs a hole and lays her greenish eggs, the males release sperm to fertilize them, and then the waves slowly cover everything back up. It sounds simple, but the scale of it, the sheer number of crabs covering the sand, is breathtaking. Now here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. Those eggs aren't just important for the next generation of horseshoe crabs, they're also a lifeline for other creatures. Every year, thousands of migratory birds, like the famous red knot, time their long journeys so they can feast on horseshoe crab eggs. Imagine traveling 9,000 miles from South America to the Arctic and stopping in Delaware Bay, New Jersey, just to eat these eggs. If the eggs aren't there in enough numbers, these birds can't complete their migration, and they die. So the survival of an entire species of birds literally depends on this ancient animal coming ashore at the right time and in the right numbers. And if you think that's amazing, let me tell you something about the eggs themselves. They're tiny, green, and packed with energy. Each female can lay up to 100,000 eggs in a season. Not all of them survive, of course. Most get eaten by birds, fish, and other creatures. That's the balance of nature. Give more than enough, so some make it to adulthood. The most magical part of this whole event, though, happens at night. If you stand on a quiet beach and watch under the moonlight, you'll see the sand shimmer with life as the waves bring in more crabs, their shells glistening like pieces of ancient armor. It's a reminder that no matter how advanced we think we are, there are still these primal, timeless rituals happening all around us, just as they always have. But like so many natural wonders, this one is under threat. Human development has eaten away at spawning beaches. Climate change is altering tides and temperatures. And then there's the overharvesting for bait and biomedical use. In some places, the number of horseshoe crabs showing up for spawning has dropped dramatically. It's heartbreaking because when you see them crawling on the sand, you realize they're not just insects of the sea, they're survivors. And yet, despite 500 million years of survival, they're vulnerable to something that only appeared in the last blink of Earth's history. Us. Here's a thought that always gets me. These animals have outlived trilobites, ammonites, dinosaurs, and countless other species. They've seen continents shift and oceans rise and fall. And yet, their survival now depends on how we manage a few short decades. Doesn't that feel like an enormous responsibility? But let me lighten the mood for a moment, because there's something really charming about how these creatures look when they're doing this migration. Picture an alien tank moving slowly across the sand, completely silent except for the sound of waves. Their little legs are working hard underneath, but you can barely see them. And that long tail? People freak out about it because they think it's a stinger, but really it's just a balancing tool. If a wave knocks them upside down, they use it to flip back over like a gymnastic pole. And guess what? If you've ever been to one of these spawning events, scientists and volunteers might ask you to help flip over stranded crabs. Sometimes they get stuck on their backs, and without help, they could dry out and die. There's something humbling about bending down on a beach at night, helping an animal that has been around for 500 million years. It makes you feel small, but in a good way, like you're part of something much bigger than yourself. Now here's another little fact you'll love. Even though these creatures seem so alien, they have something in common with us. They have blue blood because of copper, yes, but their immune system is also incredibly efficient. It's what makes their blood so good at detecting bacteria. In a way, they're like the guardians of health, not just for their own species, but for ours too. That connection between the ancient and the modern, it gives me chills. So what happens after they lay their eggs? The females return to the sea, and the eggs slowly develop under the sand. Weeks later, tiny larvae emerge, perfect miniature versions of the adults, except without tails. They look like something straight out of a prehistoric aquarium. These babies will spend their early years near the shore, shedding their shells as they grow. Remember, it can take a decade for them to reach full size. That means every crab you see out there has lived through storms, predators, and all kinds of challenges. That's resilience on a level we can hardly imagine. But resilience has limits. And if there's one thing these creatures can't adapt to quickly, it's rapid change caused by humans. That's why scientists and conservationists are working hard to protect spawning beaches, regulate harvesting, and promote alternatives to their blood in medical testing. Because if we lose horseshoe crabs, it's not just a loss for them, it's a loss for entire ecosystems and even for human health. In the next part, I'm going to take you on a deeper journey, not just into their survival and importance to the world, but into the mind-blowing ways they've shaped our history and how they might even shape our future. You're not going to believe the role this humble creature plays in the grand story of life on Earth. Think about this for a moment. A creature that has been alive for 500 million years isn't just an interesting fact, it's living history. Every time you look at a horseshoe crab, you're staring at a survivor of mass extinctions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and volcanic winters. If these creatures could tell stories, they would talk about an Earth that looked nothing like the one we know today. There were no humans, no cities, not even trees when their ancestors first appeared. The oceans were teeming with strange trilobites and giant sea scorpions. And yet, through all that chaos, the horseshoe crab thrived. And here's the part that blows my mind. They didn't need to change much. Over millions of years, while other species were constantly evolving to survive, these guys stayed almost the same. That means they found a design that worked and stuck with it. Their body, like a little armored spaceship, is perfect for survival. Their hard shell protects them from predators. Their legs and gills work in harmony to keep them moving and breathing. And that long tail acts like a built-in survival tool. It's almost like nature created the ultimate low-maintenance model and said, "This is good enough forever." But survival isn't just about the body, it's about instincts. And the instincts of a horseshoe crab are ancient and precise. When the tide and moon tell them it's time to spawn, they don't hesitate. They gather in huge numbers, just as they always have, to give life to the next generation. And they don't care about the chaos happening above the surface. Wars, skyscrapers, airplanes, and smartphones. To them, nothing has changed. The rhythm of the ocean is the only calendar they need. Now, here's something really fascinating. You know how most of us think of blood as red? Well, theirs is blue, and it's not just for show. Their blood contains a compound called hemocyanin, which uses copper instead of iron to carry oxygen. That's why it's blue. But the real magic lies in something called Limulus amebocyte lysata, or LAL. It sounds technical, but trust me, it's incredible. LAL can detect harmful bacteria better than anything else on the planet. It clots instantly when it comes into contact with toxins, which is why we use it to test medicines, vaccines, and even medical devices. Without this test, we couldn't guarantee that the things going into our bodies are safe. So the next time you get a vaccine or an IV drip, remember that an ancient creature probably played a role in making sure it was safe for you. But there's a price for this miracle. For years, we've been harvesting these crabs for their blood. Workers collect them, drain some of their blood, and then return them to the ocean. It sounds simple, but many of them don't survive the process. And when you think about the scale, hundreds of thousands of crabs being bled every year, it starts to feel heavy. We're relying on a species that has never relied on us, and if we're not careful, we could push them to the edge. Imagine that for a second. An animal that survived asteroid impacts might be wiped out by overharvesting and habitat loss. Doesn't that sound wrong? Like, how can we let something that ancient, something that perfect, disappear because we couldn't manage ourselves better? The good news is that there are scientists working on synthetic alternatives, which means one day we might not need their blood. But until then, these crabs remain a critical link in modern medicine, and that makes their survival more important than ever. And let me tell you something that always gives me chills. Every time we use their blood to make sure a drug is safe, every single time we save a life because of that test, it's like a 500-million-year-old creature is quietly watching over us. They've never asked for anything. They don't even know what we're doing. But in a way, they're part of every hospital, every vaccine, every cure. How many species can you say that about? The connection between these crabs and human life is deeper than most people realize. For many coastal communities, they've also been a part of culture and history. Indigenous people once used their shells for tools and fertilizer. Fishermen still use them for bait in some places, which is another reason their numbers have dropped. Everything about them, shell, blood, eggs, has become valuable to someone. And yet, to see one in the wild, crawling silently on a moonlit beach, you wouldn't think it's carrying the weight of so many human needs on its armored back. Now let's get back to the spawning, because what happens there isn't just biology, it's theater. When you see hundreds of these creatures piling up on the shore, it's like a slow-motion dance choreographed by nature itself. The males cling to the females like passengers on a tank, hoping for their chance to pass on their genes. And as awkward as it looks, it works. It has worked for longer than any other system you can imagine. That's the thing about evolution. It doesn't care about beauty or grace, only survival. But even in this ancient ritual, human activity is leaving its mark. Beaches are disappearing because of construction and rising seas. Artificial lights confuse these creatures, pulling them away from their natural paths. And then there's pollution, chemicals and plastics that never existed before, but now threaten something that predates everything. It's almost poetic in a sad way. A species that has survived for 500 million years might struggle because of trash. Yet, there's hope. In some areas, people are fighting back, not against the crabs, but for them. Conservation programs are restoring beaches, regulating harvesting, and creating protected zones. Volunteers walk the shore during spawning season, counting crabs, collecting data, and even flipping them over when they get stuck. And when you see someone bending down to help an animal older than the dinosaurs, you realize what real stewardship looks like. It's not about saving something cute or glamorous. It's about respect for life in its oldest, purest form. So why should any of this matter to you? Because every horseshoe crab is a reminder of resilience. They teach us that survival isn't about being the fastest or the strongest. It's about adapting and holding on, even when the world changes around you. And in a time when everything feels uncertain, isn't that the kind of lesson we need? But I'm not done yet. There's one last part to this story, and it's the part that ties everything together. The part that will make you look at this strange little creature with awe every single time you hear its name. In the next section, I'm going to show you how the horseshoe crab is not just a survivor of the past, but a silent guardian of the future, and why its story might just be one of the most important on the planet. Picture this. The waves roll in under the soft glow of the moon, and thousands of small armored creatures crawl onto the beach in perfect silence. There's no sound, no warning, no chaos, just the calm rhythm of life repeating itself as it has for 500 million years. And right there, in that quiet, you realize something incredible. You're not just watching animals, you're looking at a piece of Earth's original story. A story so old that it makes the age of dinosaurs feel like a recent event. The horseshoe crab doesn't just live, it carries time on its back. It has seen continents drift apart, oceans rise and fall, species appear and vanish, and now it crawls under the same stars that humans gaze at with wonder. But here's the real twist: its fate is now in our hands. For the first time in history, this creature that never needed us now depends on us to survive. If that doesn't make you pause, think about this. In every hospital, in every lab that tests a life-saving drug or vaccine, a part of this animal is there. Its blue blood has made modern medicine possible. Without it, we wouldn't have safe vaccines. We wouldn't trust implants or IV drips. Every time you or someone you love gets a shot that could save their life, there's a little bit of horseshoe crab in that process. This ancient creature is protecting us in ways we never even notice. And yet, most people don't even know it exists. They don't know that right now, somewhere on a dark beach, these creatures are crawling ashore, repeating a ritual that has never failed for hundreds of millions of years. They don't know that every one of those crabs is a bridge between the past and the present, a living link to an Earth we can't even imagine. But this is where the story gets complicated. We're at a crossroads. The very thing that makes them valuable to us, their blood, puts them in danger. Add habitat loss, climate change, and overharvesting, and suddenly, their survival isn't guaranteed anymore. And if that happens, if we let them disappear, what does that say about us? We would be the first force in history strong enough to erase something that even asteroid impacts couldn't destroy. Now let me ask you something. What does survival really mean? For the horseshoe crab, it meant being steady while the world changed. It meant sticking to what works, trusting nature's blueprint. For us, survival has meant innovation, growth, and control. But here's the question: can we learn something from them? Can we step back and respect something so ancient that it doesn't just tell a story, it is the story? Because if we can, then maybe there's hope. And there are signs of that hope already. Scientists are finding ways to create synthetic versions of the compound in their blood, so one day, we might not need to bleed them at all. Conservation groups are fighting to protect their habitats, and every person who learns about them, every person who understands their importance, becomes part of that fight. The truth is, we don't have to lose them, but we do have to choose. And that choice starts with awareness. Right here, right now, with you listening to this story. Because now you know what they are. Now you know what they've done for us. And now you know what's at stake if they're gone. So the next time you see the ocean, take a second and picture them crawling quietly beneath the waves, armored survivors from another time. They don't roar, they don't fight, they don't demand attention, they just exist, stubbornly and beautifully, against all odds. And maybe that's the greatest lesson they can teach us, that survival isn't loud, it isn't flashy, and it isn't easy. It's patience, it's resilience, it's knowing when to hold on. This is the story of the horseshoe crab, a creature that has outlived almost everything else on Earth and still plays a role in saving lives today. And if that doesn't make you respect it, if that doesn't make you want to protect it, then think about this one last thing. When you look at one, you are looking at something that saw the first forests grow, that watched the first fish crawl onto land, that lived through 5 mass extinctions, and that now, somehow, has its fate intertwined with yours. That's not just an animal, that's living eternity.